You do campaign on the party of a steady ship, rock solid, you can rely on us. But you would have to concede that image has been dented over the past few months.
Well, we've had to deal with some big issues. I've dealt with some legacy issues that, and we saw that with Rangitata, the MP there. Well, last night the party selected Megan Hands to be the new candidate. She'll be excellent, someone we know, someone who's, a farmer, environmental expert, planner, someone highly qualified. Yeah, I think we'll be fine.
People talk about the lack of depth in the government's cabinet, that once you get past Megan Woods, Grant Robertson and Chris Hipkins, it's a bit light. Would you say you're stacked with talent, though, with the announcing of your list?
Oh, we absolutely are. We've got people with immense range of skills and experience. So it's not just experience in government and in Parliament, but experience before Parliament, which I think is crucial if you're going to have a whole range of people. So if you look at, let's just look at people. Obviously, we have some people who have been parliamentary staffers, but most of our people have had either businesses, they've had business backgrounds, they've been obviously with Megan Hands, planners. We've had people like Andrew Bailey, who's actually run investment for transport projects. So a whole range of people. Was Agnes Lohini on our list? People see her, they say, she's had a small business. Well, she's also a chemical engineer. Yeah. So, let's just give a bit of credit here. Or Harati Hepango, 30 years practice as a lawyer in the courts. You go people with a lot of skills, a lot of experience, and when they say something, they know about it. Or just take even Dr. Shane Retty. Oh, yeah. I think one of the finest MPs I've seen coming into Parliament. Unbelievably great policy work, but also extremely clever and dedicated and loyal.
Now, of course, in an MMP environment, you have to be able to work with other parties, if you're going to have a show. You saw that last election. So, who can you work with?
Well, I would always maintain the thing that we should see how things work in the election, because obviously we have to do whatever we have to do to take back the country back into a path of economic development rather than, I'm never going to put economic development with someone like Phil Twyford, which is what the Labour leader's done. I'd actually put it with somebody who knows what they're doing. But so we need to do that. But we have a very good and close relationship with the ACT Party. I'm not going to make any, bones about it. I get on very well with David Seymour. I think he is a person of principle. And frankly, I'd rather deal with people of principle than people who don't have any principles.
Like?
What? I'm not going to name them. They can name themselves. We've done deals with the Green Party on various issues, such as Warm Up New Zealand, that we did when we first came into government in 2008. So we can work with people on a range of issues. I've dealt with people in the New Zealand First Party too, but I don't think they're going to be back this election. In fact, I think that they have not been a handbrake on the Labour Greens grouping. They've actually been the enabler. So actually, I think a lot of people have lost any confidence in them. So I just don't think they're going to be back.
Do you see the Northland poll as being indicative of that?
Well, I don't take too much out of polls. I take more out of the fact that I've been up there a lot and I've seen the way that people react to Matt King and I've seen the way that they talk about Shane Jones. And I thought, on that polling, Matt was about late 40s and Shane Jones was 15. I thought that was very generous to Shane. I thought he's probably more closer to 8 from what I've seen. And I've been right on pretty much every election. I can tell it just by going out in the community, listening to people and the way they react. And I tell you, what I'm seeing are huge crowds for me when I'm going places, huge numbers of volunteers joining up our party, donations coming in, but also a lot of people energised and a massive, you see billboards everywhere. Those are all put up by volunteers, the National Party.
Is that energy because of you?
Well, I think I'm bringing some of that energy, and I think people can see that. I'm someone who is a highly energetic person, and people know what I stand for. And I just think the whole team's energised. We're just buzzing. Caucus is great.
When it comes to, and I hate to refer back to the schmozzles because that was before you were there, but I did have listeners to the show ringing me, texting me, saying bugger National, basically. Blow them. If they can't get their house in order, I'll vote for ACT. Some were saying they were going to vote strategically. National doesn't have a chance, so I'm going to give my vote to Labour so they can govern alone without the Greens.
Well, they're just wrong. So even if you do put polls together and take much of them, if you put National and the ACT party together, New Zealand First goes, the Greens go, which I think they probably will too, you end up with a National-led government of National and ACT. I think that's perfectly fine. And I think that's a lot of people want. So the best way of making that happen, to have National leading a government, is to vote National. I think too it's really important for people to understand that whenever they've tried to be strategic, they've ended up voting in Winston Peters, and he's always supported Labour governments for the last 24 years. 24 years, Kerre. How long is this guy going to be able to get away with this story that he could work with either side? I mean, last election, Bill English was offering him all sorts of deals to get his policies through, and he was just playing us along.
Of course he was. I still find it unbelievable. I mean, people clearly forget history when they think that if they vote Winston Peters, it means a national government. People
want to believe someone when they tell them something, even if they may later find out it could be not as truthful as maybe it was. I mean, I just don't think for a moment. I mean, there are people in the New Zealand First Party I get on very well with. I don't have any personal animosity to Mr. Peters. I think, you've got to give someone credit for hanging in there for so long. But the best thing we ever did in 2008 in that election campaign was to rule him out. And that was the best thing we did.
Hi there. You've got a question.
I have. Just wondered, a couple of questions really. Number one, how much are we going to owe at the end of all of this? And how's Judith's government going to start paying it back?
Yeah, good on you, Mike. Thanks for that curveball. Well, I tell you what, we're going to owe obviously a lot of money, and the current government's already borrowed $13 billion against your future income by just paying out the wage subsidy in the last few months. But I think they had to do it, frankly. We would have had, this complete lockdown for most of the country and a whole lot of people just out of work if they hadn't done it. So I think they had to do it. But that just gives you an idea of the scale of it. So we reckon that if you're going to be borrowing money, and we are going to have to borrow money, let's be frank, we are going to have to put that into investing, which is really where the big infrastructure spends are, which is about building the economy as well, doing whatever we can so that we can basically build the economy and get ourselves out of that debt situation. But I tell you what, every country in the world's having to borrow at the moment. And
I'm an employer. I'm an employer, Judith, so I did use the first subsidy. Yep. I didn't need to use the second subsidy. Good. And it was absolutely fantastic. Yep. But the point is, we can't keep paying for everything. At some point, we've got to stand up and whatever falls over, falls over.
There are going to be obviously some businesses that cannot continue, and we've already seen some close down. But it is important that we have to get people into work. That's the best way of growing the economy. What I do know, you can't tax your way out of a recession. You can't tax your way out of economic crisis. And that's all we're hearing from, the other parties is that, the Green Party, I think they just sort of run some stuff up for the Labour Party saying, let's tax everything. You can't tax your way out of it. You've got to grow your way out of it. And that's what we've got to do.
Thank you, Mike. Bev says, can you please ask Judith what she'll do about the gangs in Hawke's Bay? We're sick to death of them creeping in large and intimidating numbers, driving Harley Davidsons and flash new utes, prospects cruising around peering in windows and cars. Why can't we ban patches?
Well, it's not so much the patches, is it, really? It's their behaviours. So they are criminal behaviours. We took a very tough line when I was in government on gangs, and particularly their criminal behaviour, and that was around things like the anti-money laundering legislation, but also the seizing of their assets. You would have seen the police parading quite a few things like gold-plated motorbikes and things like that, and large amounts of cash. So we have a policy that will be coming up very soon. You will see that we are going to be very tough on gangs. There will not be any tolerance to this nonsense, and we do not equate gangs to Rotary clubs like some parties have been known to do in the past. It is absolutely disgraceful that these guys have got the message that, it's just all a bit of peace and love and hug, and they're just misunderstood. They're criminals, and we don't want them there.
Newstalk ZB 922.
With a rating of 4.6 out of 5 on Google reviews, we looked at what Auckland had to say about elite bathroom wear. Leanne says,
"Great products, super friendly and helpful staff, excellent pricing, that's why I keep going back."
Anne says,
"We've used Elite Bathroom Wear for the last few projects and we're delighted with their service and the extensive product range."
Elite Bathroom Wear, your local bathroom superstore, Allens Road, East Tamaki, or shop online at elitebathroomwear.co.nz.
When it comes to retirement living, Quail Ridge Country Club sets the standard. For a very limited time, Quail Ridge is raising the bar even further, offering its next 10 residents over $20,000 worth of furnishings from Harvey Norman. Over $20,000 worth of furnishings, just to add those finishing touches to your amazing new luxury home. For terms and conditions and to secure your dream site, inquire today. Phone 0800 Quail Ridge.
Last year, Emma Gillard won a $20,000 Shop Local advertising package from 2 Degrees Business. And after a bit of happy screaming, was able to get her North Canterbury bookstore, Emma's at Oxford, in front of more bookworms than ever. Now 2 Degrees Shop Local is back to support Kiwi business for a second year. Register your Auckland business at 2degrees.nz/shop local to be in to win a $20,000 advertising package. 2 Degrees, fighting for fair for Kiwi business. Terms apply.
Talk back with Judith Collins on Kerre McIvor Mornings. Call 0800 80 1080. Newstalk ZB.
And we're ripping through as many of your calls as we can and your questions. Good morning, Chris.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, Judith.
Good morning, Chris.
I'd just like to ask, how do National plan to address the state of Pharmac and the funding of life-saving and life-prolonging drugs for New Zealanders that are currently having to revert to the likes of Give a Little pages, etc., to basically keep living?
Well, there's a couple of things I can say there, Chris. First off, if you're talking about cancer drugs, that we have committed $200 million to set up a new cancer agency, absolutely focused on those particular drugs and making sure that New Zealanders get the opportunities that we see available to Australians. It is also very important too in gynecological cancers that we've announced that just the other day, or I announced it, I should say, and actually, as we know, most gynecological cancers come from the HPV virus. We know that these days. There are very easy tests that can be done at home, administered at home by yourself, to test whether or not you've got the HPV virus. That is something that we have said we're putting $20 million into not only those tests, which will give us 10,000 tests a year, but would also get people information on it and what they do, because as I'm sure you know, we get 1,000 gynecological cancers diagnosed every year, and 475 women dying of that every single year. This is an entirely preventable cancer, and it is something which is an utter disgrace that more hasn't been done. So we have committed to that. The previous, or the current government, I should say, I'm already thinking about them as previous. I think why not? Think positively.
Think positive.
Oh, please get rid of them. Anyway, they said they were going to do this before the last election, and they've fluffed around, and now they've announced they're not going to do it because they can't work out their database. Well, for goodness sake, every doctor in the country, every family practice has got a database, work through that. But also, I can do a DNA test at home. I think we can do the other one. No problem at home. No problem at all.
Thank you very much, Chris. Peter, hello.
Tēnā kōrua, Judith and Kerre. I'm interested in your social services delivery policy. Would Louise Upston be using the Productivity Commission inquiry of August 15 to develop that policy?
Well, it must have been August 15 that from last year. Is that what you're talking about?
That was one that Bill English used to develop his social investment policy.
That's a few years ago. So the social investment, yes, I can tell you that we are committed to social investment. We have a very good policy coming out very soon on that, and you're going to see some tweaking of what we've done in the past, but I think it is something that hopefully you will really enjoy. I think we learned an awful lot from the Whānau Ora programs, which of course was part of our coalition deal with the Māori Party. And what we see is really important is that if we can get the best efforts and interventions into those families who will otherwise, if we don't do it really early, we can end up paying an awful lot later on, but not only just paying a lot later on, but actually really bad outcomes, particularly for children. So you'll see some good policy there. I hope you like it. I hope you see that it's very focused on putting the big effort in where it should be, when it should be.
So I'm a Māori Party supporter too, so I'll be interested to see if that whānau ora model is something that forms the basis of it as well.
Yeah, it is. I just hope the Māori Party get in, and I hope that they realise that the Māori Party and Māori generally did, I think, very well under a national-led government, and we're very committed to that whole focus of whānau ora.
I was so sorry to see that much of that work that Bill English and Dame Tariana Turia had done was just...
It's thrown out.
Yeah, it was... Because that, to me, Tēnā koe, Peter, was just absolutely... fundamental to change it, to effective change and generational change.
One of the things that we've seen with this current government is their inability to give credit where it's due, and I think hopefully people will see that if we see something useful that they do, that we do give them credit for it. But they just threw out all these policies that have been worked on for years, and actually programs worked on for years, because it wasn't theirs. I just think that's so petty and small-minded.
The entrepreneurial one that you announced seems to have been picked up by them.
Oh, well, they've picked up, the Labour Party's now picked up a policy that we put out in 2012 when we were in government, and we actually implemented it. So they've now rehashed one of our policies that we implemented, which was about giving people who are unemployed an opportunity through employment by basically allowing an employer to get the dole so they can... the equivalent of it, so that they are not being burdened with the full cost of keeping people employed at the start. But the only thing with that policy is that it was really right for 2012, and that's because we had high employment. At the moment, although right now there's still reasonably high employment, we still have 212,000 people now on the unemployment benefit, and that's up 70,000 since the lockdown. So, and we know what's coming when we look at the... when the wage subsidy comes off on the 1st of September, we know we're looking at high unemployment, and we're also looking at a lot of highly skilled, very motivated people being unemployed. So that's not necessarily the same sort of policy. We can also, obviously keep that, but there's also other policies that we've talked about, like Business Start and
that's
Job
what I mean,
Start.
the Business
the
Start
business
one,
start.
and they've taken that and run with it.
Well, they haven't really. They've said that when I asked Jacinda Ardern about it in Parliament the other day, she said, for people who want to be entrepreneurial and want to set up their own business, they should go and ask Work and Income about it. I mean, for goodness sake, really? Give people a chance.
Newstalk ZB, the Leader of the Opposition, Judith Collins, is here taking your questions. It's 9:30. I was expecting when you became leader to sort of launch into a whole lot of policy, but you've been...
Oh, I don't know. I announced $31 billion worth of infrastructure, not just spend, but actually building in the about the second day I was the leader. So we've been putting out a lot of policy, and I've got even got one today.
A special one just for me.
Exclusive to Kerre Woodham's morning and on ZB.
Yes.
Yeah. So what it is Kerre, aren't you just so annoyed if you have a little praying in the car and you have to ask for someone's insurance details, and they look all shifty and give you something or whatever. So what we're saying is, rather than giving you a false detail, because you've got no evidence of it, what we want to do is say we want to encourage people to take car insurance and make it a lot easier for everyone else who's on the receiving end of a crash or involved in a crash. So what we're going to do is require car insurer details to be displayed on car registration labels. So it will be actually on the label itself, and if you're not insured, it will say you're uninsured. So that will be interesting. We think that will encourage a lot of people to suddenly get themselves car insurance. We also want to link that motor vehicle database with insurer details to help assist in the smooth exchange of insurer information, because we've seen, certainly heard from people who have had this happen. Their insurance companies contacted the supposed insurance company and they said, nah, not covered by us. And the details are all gone, you can't get them, it's too hard. We end up with other people, the innocent party, losing their no claims and having to pay up. So we just think it's really important that we get that. It's not a huge change, except in terms of cost or anything, not a big dollar amount, but what it is, it's a really good incentive for people to get insured.
But so many people haven't got their proper licences, and nor do they register their vehicles.
Well, in which case, why are they on the roads? Because, our car registration pays for the ACC costs for obviously car crashes. It's not acceptable, and it's about encouraging people to do the right thing.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that nice little plum.
Yeah. So we think there's about 2009 there was a Ministry of Transport survey of 4,000 New Zealanders, and they found that 7% of vehicle owners had an uninsured vehicle or did not even know if their vehicle was insured.
Crikey.
Right. I don't know. How do they get
walk
themselves?
Amongst us.
They don't know. They don't know how. I don't know how they find their car keys.
I know. I hear you. All right. Good. Yeah. And it's not going to cost a lot, and it's just going to make life easier for a lot of people. Hi, Lim.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lynn.
Good morning, Judith. I have a huge amount of respect for you and really following your career. But I do have a question for you. You do refer quite often to we need to get people back in jobs. Mm-hmm. Current nursing students in universities, when they graduate, there's only a certain amount of positions available to get them into healthcare, into nursing. The rest need to go and find something else to do. I do find that a little bit of an unfair system, spending a lot of time getting trained as a nurse and there's no jobs available. Can you look into this in some way or another, or how could this be addressed?
Well, I think that's a very good point, Lynn. We're certainly have over the years imported a lot of nurses when we have nurses being trained in New Zealand. And when my elder sister trained as a registered nurse, it was in the days you trained in the hospital, so you actually had a job. And I think one of the things that's happened is this big disconnect between the university training and the hospitals with no particular guarantee of anything. So, I'm not going to say we're going to change the whole system, but I think what we are going to see is, particularly with the borders in the situation they are now, we're not going to have the same, or employers aren't going to have the same opportunities to bring in the registered nurses when we've already got registered nurses looking for work now. So it is really important, I think, that everyone starts to look at employing people in New Zealand wherever possible. And if we've got registered nurses without jobs, we need to know about that. So it's certainly, thank you for raising the issue, because it's not one that's been raised before with me.
A lot of texts saying, why don't we just have compulsory third-party insurance?
Well, we looked at that too. We thought that this is the first step on that, as to give people an opportunity to do the right thing. And the issue has always been that the cost of that can be, in enforcement of it, and verification can be very difficult, but we think this is a good step, and if it turns out that this works well, we'll move on to the next one if we need to. I just think, I'm fully of the view that if you're driving a car, you need to have it insured. It's not fair.
It's not fair. So you'd rather rely on personal responsibility than enforcement?
We'll give them a start right now and see how that goes. It's called carrot and stick. Okay. Carrot first, then the stick.
Joanna, good morning to you.
Well, good morning. Yes, I'm another fan, Judith, and I thought you should have been the leader as soon as Bill English resigned, but however...
Yep, well, there we go, Joe. You can't always get everything we want. But I'm there now.
Yes. Well, now, look, here's some gratuitous advice for you about electioneering, because... Yes. I think that it's a mistake for National to be saying what a great job the government did of COVID, because my belief is that if National had been in government, they would have done a better job. I believe that you would have closed the borders sooner, which would have meant that only the tourist industry would have suffered, and we wouldn't have had to have the huge lockdown that we've had, and you would have managed quarantine better. And I feel that you should be, depends how much of that you want to say, but I'm hearing far too many idiots saying that Jacinda saved their lives.
Yeah. Well, Joanna, it's hard to disagree with you in any way or anything you've said, but you are right that National was calling for the borders to be closed back in February, and that was Michael Woodhouse who was calling for that then, and the fact is that we could have actually stopped COVID-19 coming in the first place, and you are correct. But the thing is that a whole lot of people have believed that the spin from the Prime Minister, the Labour leader, about going early and hard on it, and we know fully well that quite a lot came in. But having said that, I think the public responded very well to the call for everyone to, put put the country first and to not worry too much about what had happened and just, get on and make sure we didn't spread this dreadful disease. But, it's hard to disagree with you, Joanna. I'd say, would you like to be a candidate for us?
I do think, though, that you don't want to look churlish.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was then.
Yeah, that's then. And this is now. And we know we would have done things a bit differently, but it's easy to have hindsight. But we were calling in February. But look, it's no point going over it because ultimately people feel that, New Zealand has not suffered the same issues that many other countries have. And it's easy to close our borders in New Zealand. You just close your borders. It's not hard because we are surrounded by incredibly huge oceans, and it's not like anyone can just wander across them. So it's easy. The issue is what to do next, and that's where I think Joanna, the issue is going to be is who can actually put the economy back into a better footing more quickly and also more soundly, and not just eat huge amounts of money and just spray it all around.
Right, we'll just do a couple of quickies off the text. Is Labor going to bring in compulsory collective bargaining, or is that off the table? Says Heather.
Well, I'm happy to say that the Labor leader needs to front up and ask and answer that, because certainly that was what they were talking about before the election, and we've seen no evidence that they're not going to do it. That would be actually crucial. That would just destroy a whole lot of businesses.
What is National's take on the tar cull, please?
Oh, for goodness sake, you Janie Sage, honestly. What that woman she has no fun at all, is she? I mean, honestly. We are totally against the tar cull by DOC. We think this is absolutely reprehensible. We're taking an industry where people like to go off and hunt and get a tar and have a trophy and all that. This is worth a lot of money, and once we can actually get a bit more confidence around the border, I mean, obviously you'd want to have the odd person come in to be able to pay about $50,000 into the country just to go shoot a tar. Well, good on them.
Seeing as we're talking about guns, gun buyback has been a huge issue for our listeners.
Yeah, well, look, honestly, we've got no confidence at all in the government's ability to do anything, really. I mean, we've seen it with the gun buyback, big talk about what they're going to do, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. What happened? So pretty much nothing. It's been a total and utter failure, and it's always because they underestimate what's involved. Almost none of them have ever had any experience actually doing anything other than talking about it, and they don't understand the logistics involved and the fact that if you're going to do buybacks on guns, they need to be generous buybacks, and you need to actually have the confidence of the people that it's the right thing to do.
National supported it, though.
Well, we supported them actually doing it, but we didn't support the way they did it, and we didn't support the way that they actually operationalised it. If you're going to do it, my view is, if you're going to take people's possessions like that, then you have to be more than generous. You can't be silly about it, and you also have to have people's confidence. But the other thing is, Kerre, I'm like everyone else. I said, as the National Party said as a whole, if you're going to take guns off law-abiding people, why the hell do they sit around letting the gangs have them? You've got the firearm prohibition orders that we put up as again into Parliament as one of the things, which is basically where the gangs have these guns, police can go in and take them away from them and just go and do it. What did Labor do? Voted against it. What did New Zealand First do? Voted against it. What did the Greens do? Of course they voted against it. So they're all happy to go after law-abiding people, but what about the gangs? And our view is no, and we haven't supported the last tranche of what they've been doing, and the reason is they're not being fair, and they're taking easy targets, and those easy targets are law-abiding people.
Mary, good morning to you.
Good morning, Kerre, and good morning, Judith.
Good morning, Mary.
It's good to talk to you. My question is, what is a national-led government going to do about appointing an aged care commissioner who's completely independent to look into our aged care problems and issues that we have? I know that Jacinda mentioned that she would do it when she was electioneering. It hasn't happened. And what's National's take on that policy?
Right, well, we haven't announced a policy on that, Mary, and I'm not going to put out our seniors policy today, but we haven't announced a policy. But you are right that Jacinda Ardern campaigned on that last election, and lo and behold, hasn't done it. So I'm not surprised. We are very aware of the issues that aged concern has brought to us, and we've certainly seen issues in some rest homes or retirement homes where people have been very badly treated. We've seen it with the inquiry and the work done by the Health and Disability Commissioner as well. So we do know that there is a problem. Wait for our policy to come out on seniors, but we are very aware of the issue. We're also aware that some families have been, unfortunately, not everybody can rely on their family to act reasonably towards them. And my experiences, 20 years in law, taught me one thing, is that I've never seen greed like I've seen in some families.
All right, thank you for that. And just a quickie, would you consolidate the DHBs?
Well, Dr. Shane Retty has been looking at that, and he's the health spokesperson. His view is that they could consolidate some of their actions. He's not so fussed about restructuring everything. And I think one of the things that, even though people look at the country and say, there's about 22 different DHBs, it's an awful lot. The problem with that is what you're trying to seek is to get better experience and better qualifications and better service. You can do that already, and some DHBs have been doing that. In the Auckland DHBs, Auckland, Waitemata and Counties Manukau, they've been doing that anyway, where they have centres of excellence. Right. There's no reason at all why other DHBs can't. But I can tell you this number one thing that we will not be doing is we will not let DHBs limit or allocate health treatment based on race, which is what we've seen Labor allow some DHBs to do. And that is really important, that we cannot have that. It has to be on the need and also all the other effects that should be taken into account, not someone's race.
Newstalk ZB, the Leader of the Opposition, is with us. It is 9 to 10. Tax. Yeah. A lot of questions about tax.
Yeah, people should be really worried, and Jacinda Ardern needs to front up. She needs to tell us, is she actually going to put the asset tax in, the wealth tax, the death duties, all the sorts of things that the Green Party been out flying their little flag on. The fact is that you can't tax your way out of a recession. You can't tax your way out of economic crisis. You've got to grow your way out, because there's no way you can just tax people more and more. And as we know, so many families have lost one income. That way they don't actually get any extra benefits or anything, but they've lost an income, or we've lost part-time work, and it's just going to make it harder for people. So she needs to front up. We're not going to put on any extra taxes. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to adjust the thresholds so that they can actually be brought back into line with inflation over the last few years. It's really important to do that so that people will have a bit more money in their own pocket, because we have to have people with money in their pocket so that they can actually buy things, keep the money going round, keep people employed. That's what we need to do. The other thing is, if you're in a business and you're thinking about buying some equipment, wait for us to come into government, because at the moment you can only claim back $5,000 as a capital write-off straight away on that. We're going to let you claim back $150,000 off your tax straight away. So you basically, if you buy a little digger, not a big digger, or something like that, you'll be able to claim back the full cost straight away. So you've written it off. That's going to help encourage people to buy more, invest more into their businesses, get better equipment, and that's going to help hugely.
And another question, are you going to repeal the new tenancy laws that Chris Farfoy introduced?
Yeah, the latest one's absolutely out the door. We've ended up with more people now waiting on a State House waiting list, from 5,000 we left office, and we were a bit embarrassed about that one, to now 18,000 families after 3 years of a Labor-led government. That's what happens when you bash landlords day in, day out. And that's what's happened. So, yeah, we absolutely are. And the latest thing is, you can't, as a landlord, get rid of these antisocial tenants that cause mayhem for all the other tenants around them. So no, get rid of them.
They're only 2% troublesome.
Exactly. And so, but why would you send that message that you can have your rowdy parties, you can have your dogs all over the place, you can, abuse your neighbours, you can be an absolute mayhem, and actually cause tremendous stress to everyone else around you.
Just finally, you're up against an incredibly popular Prime Minister who's got global attention, who's young, who's relatable. What have you got?
Experience. Experience is really, really helpful. I mean, a wide range of experience, not only in government and in Parliament, but right before I even came in, 20 years in law, but also 20 years in small business, having to sort out problems for people day in, day out. Look, I'm not someone who fluffs around for months waiting on working out how to make a decision. I can make decisions and I can implement them.
Judith Collins, as always, a pleasure. Leader of the Opposition, loving every minute of it. Best-selling author. When's the follow-up?
Oh, well, when I've got time, Kerre, but I tell you what, it's going to be spicy.